Okay, cool. I think this is working. Happy Sunday, everyone. So this is the first time I've done this. It's basically a production breakdown of a track that I've written. And it's the first time I've done it where you can see my screen. So hopefully this will be quite insightful, even if you're not a producer or a budding producer. It's just, I watch this stuff and I find it really interesting, on YouTube. So I'm gonna try and give that a go. This is basically the project that I used for one of my newest tracks that's come out called Not Every Weekend, and it's pretty much like a synth-pop kind of vibe. Well, I guess all my tracks kind of are these days, but I wanted to sort of just show you how the different little pieces that came together to form what it is. And I think if you can see my screen, it makes it a little bit more interesting, a little bit easier. So let me break it down bit by bit. The biggest parts of this track are the drums and the synths and the bass and the lead, like most tracks, I suppose. So with the drums, everything in here pretty much is MIDI, in the sense that it's like pieces of information sent to the computer which it can read in various different ways. So I'm very much a bedroom producer in the sense that a lot of this stuff is programmed. It's not live, in the sense that I didn't play it in live, and that's just a very different way of working. I used to be very different. I used to make guitar music and everything had to be done manually, which is obviously a great way of recording, but this is a totally different approach for me in recent times. And I think one of the interesting things about being able to program stuff like drums is you get quite different rhythms that you wouldn't have got if you were sort of playing by hand or using real drums. So for example, with this is like a drum rack, so it's a collection of different samples that I put together into one sort of kit. So you've got your kick here, like a snare, a clap, stuff like that, bongos, cymbals, clap, and a bit of cowbell, because you can never have too much cowbell, right? And one of the great things about this is that I could literally just create a blank sort of clip and just punch in different samples at different places to basically draw a rhythm. And what I ended up with was something that sounds a bit like this. Right, that's the kind of intro, and then things would come out as the song went on. So then you get a little bit of shaker there. Can you hear that? And then when you get to the chorus, you get some cowbell going on and a bit of clap. And I think a big part of writing songs is that different parts will come in and out as different parts of the song as the song progresses. So, and it's sometimes quite subtle, but you sort of notice it in the overall sound at the end. I'll show you what I mean. So yeah, that's pretty much my drums. I usually just get a bunch of nice samples together, group them up, and then create patterns. And then to that, I've added a few effects, like I've got a little bit of panning going on, so it's kind of going, you get a bit of stereo width, you hear it go in one ear and then into the other ear, which kind of creates a bit of surround sound. This is a drum bus, so I've added a bit of compression here. I've sort of trimmed the transients so it's a little bit more punchy. So without it, it sounds like just a little bit wider. This makes it, I don't know exactly how it works, but it makes it a bit tighter. Anyway, those are the drums pretty much. Another big part of this is the synth. And this is just a very basic kind of square saw wave, and it's just like a seventh chord, and it's literally, this whole track is just 2 chords, which is kind of mad. I didn't realise that until I started looking at it this morning. And it's just very simply this kind of rhythm, right, the whole way through. That's literally it, but it just plays around quite nicely with these drums. So a big part of songwriting for me is having very simple ideas, but they all work very well together. You don't want something that's too overwhelming, otherwise it sounds, I don't know, for me it doesn't sound right. So, for me it's about keeping it simple, but all the ideas have to be quite strong and they work well together. So I quite like how the synth kind of jumps around the drums. Even though they're just like very simple chords, it has a bit of life to it, I think. So moving on, we've got the bass here. This is another quite simple. What is this? This is a sine wave. It's had a few effects put on it, had a bit of EQ, a bit of compression, and it sounds like this on its own. And let me play that with. So it's all kind of simple stuff, but it just plays. They all play together well, if that makes any sense. And then so you've got a bass, you've got kind of drums, and you've got the main meat of the synth with those nice fat chords. So then what you need is a lead. Now I created this patch myself as well. This one is basically, again, it's an operator synth. So this is a synth that comes with Ableton Live, which is the software I'm using. And I've just kind of messed around with it to create this quite nice airy, organic sounding bell effect. Oh no, I'll play it on its own. And then if we whack that on top of. So now we have 4 different parts, right? They all kind of, and they've all got their own spaces in the mix, right? And then a final little bit which kind of comes in at different parts is this. It's like similar to the main chords up here, and it's the same chords, but it's just a slightly different sound, and it's much more sparsely used, and it's very kind of echoey, and it adds a bit of space in the mix. I'll play it to you. Play it with the. So that's just, it just gives it a little bit more airiness. It's like something in the background, which is, I don't know, just makes it a little bit more interesting. Again, it's quite subtle, but when you hear it all together, I think it sounds quite pleasing. So those are the kind of main elements, and then the kind of next big challenge of this, of putting a song together, is just arranging it, right? So you want to figure out where stuff goes, where it comes in, where it comes out. And to help with that, once I've sort of come up with an idea, I can then sort of name, sort of like signpost where everything is in my project. So you can see here I've got intro, I've got, verse, chorus 1, post chorus, and that just helps me to navigate a little bit more. So then you kind of end up, putting a song together just sort of by taking things in and out, moving things around. It's very easy, really. We've come a long way in the last sort of 20-30 years. This stuff would have been impossible not so long ago. So I do feel very lucky to be able to just basically do this in bed, like what I'm doing right now. And then I guess the last thing I'll walk you through is the vocals. And I find that the vocals are a very difficult thing to get right, probably the hardest thing to get right out of everything, because you can make a track sound really nice production wise and songwriting wise, but if the vocals don't sound right, it's going to ruin the whole thing. I think that's the thing that most people will pay attention to the most, right? It's the vocals that make or break a track. So for me, I spend a lot of time trying to make it sound how I want it to sound. So what I normally do is take 2 different tracks, take 2 different takes of each section. So this is the verse 1, right? And so I've got 1 take here on its own, and then I've got another take, and I've just doubled them up to make it sound a little bit wider, and then I'll add a little bit of sort of effects on it. So I'll add some compression to make it sound a little bit glued together, a bit of EQ, so taking out some of the low ends, so getting the right frequencies. You don't want it to sound too bassy or too muffled or whatever. And then I add a little bit of chorus, which just widens the mix a little bit, so you can hear it here, right? It sounds like this on its own,
Getting in circles, big city life. I got no
play it.
reason till we arrive. Brixton meets Soho.
So yeah, and that's what I'll do for the vocals. And if I want it to sound even fatter, I'll normally add even more takes. So you can see here in the chorus I've got 6 takes, which just makes it, it makes it sound bigger. And I think that's quite, if you want to signify that part of a track's meant to have a bit more oomph to it, by adding more and more tracks in, it can sometimes sound, it can do that. So anyway, that's very in a nutshell, what I'm doing most of the time when I write songs. I really enjoy, the process. That's one of the most exciting parts for me, actually the coming together of a track and getting it to sound how you want it. So really, there are other little bits in here, but I think I just wanted to give you the kind of meat and bones of it. And I hope you find that interesting. Now that we're going into a second lockdown, I would quite like to do some more of these because I'm going to have probably a lot more time on my hands, and it is fun. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later.